Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Thursday, March 12th, the off day at the World Baseball Classic. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, we're sitting here ready to preview a WBC quarterfinal. I know we both predicted that it would happen for Team Canada when this tournament began, but it took a couple ups, a couple downs to get here, but we are here and excited to kind of dive into this matchup against none other than the United States of America.
Yes, they claim to have taken our game, and now Canada looks to respond in kind. I think that definitely, I think this seemed like it was going to be on tap. I don't think we had them being the one seed necessarily, although I'm sure that Canada is still very heavy on the underdog front. But this no doubt will be, I mean, dare I say, the biggest game in the history of Canadian baseball if we're just talking international.
I mean, if they win this game, right? Like you think about that, just kind of the impact of beating this US team where, it's MVPs, it's All-Stars, it's Aaron Judge, it's Paul Skeens, even though he won't be pitching in the game. Like just some of baseball's brightest stars, the Team USA kind of entered the tournament, peacocking that this is the best baseball team ever assembled. And well, they finished second in their pool, so obviously they are gettable. Team Italy, like an incredible round robin for them to be able to knock off the US and push them into second. But how do you feel overall, kind of about Canada's chances in this game? I know it's lined up Michael Soroka against Logan Webb. Um, the odds makers have not been very very kind to Canada, but how do you feel as somebody on this side of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's murmurs as well. I think we had seen that, some talk of maybe Jameson Tyone factoring in. We'll see if that actually does come to pass. I mean, listen, it's an uphill battle to say the very least. I mean, this is a Canada team that's the best that they've ever really produced, I would say, or if not the best, then among the best. And pales in comparison to the star-studded all-star lineup that the United States can boast. So, you're in tough. This is not going to be an easy game, and it's going to be a lot of matchups. It's going to be a lot of working around guys. I mean, there's no weak links in a U.S. lineup that 1 through 9 is littered, as you mentioned, with MVPs and All-Stars and Cy Youngs on the pitching front. So it's going to be a huge task. Now, with that said, there's still reason to be optimistic. Just look at the Italy game and the way
Yeah.
that they took down the US, right? I mean, they were maybe not as large, but certainly enormous underdogs in their own right. And, Italy has become just the story of the tournament without a doubt. But even outside of that, it's just, the old saying goes, you can't predict baseball. And if Canada can scratch a couple runs across, if they can pick up a big defensive play here and there. It's going to take some luck. It's going to take some good fortune. But I mean, even the Dodgers last year lost, 60 odd, 70 odd games. You never know what's going to happen. And especially in a single elimination game like this, it really is anything is possible.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting. I mean, kind of, you think of keys to this game for Canada. I think you look at the Italy game and how they were able to come out on top of that. I think of just not walking guys was so important for them in that one, right? Where they don't give this US team, which has great control of the strike zone, any free bases. They limit, they throw strikes, they get them out. Michael Lorenzen obviously was filling up the zone. So to me, the key for Canada on the pitching side, and I think that is where, you're going to have to keep up on the pitching side for sure, right? Like you can't have a repeat of 2023 where you give up 12 runs in the first two innings. And so just like thinking keys to the game, like strike throwing, living in the zone but not in the middle of the zone. I mean that's kind of like a no duh statement, but going to be very, very, very essential against this US lineup.
No, it holds true, right? It's going to be a case of having it be pinpoint and pristine in a lot of ways, right? Because we've seen to this point, I mean, if we're being honest, a pitcher's park in Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
that the offense has done its job by and large, save for the debacle, if you want to call it that, against the Panamanians, the offense has by and large really done what it's needed to do. And you're going to be heading, as we kind of talked about in our previous episode, to a bit more of a hitter-friendly park in Houston. There's going to be opportunity. And, whether or not they'll be able to keep up with the US, it is just going to be a case of limiting the pitching mistakes because the bats, I mean, listen, Logan Webb is a great pitcher, but he's not Tarek Skubal, he's not Paul Skeens. He's gettable. We're likely to see some guys from the pen, and it's not like they're running out their top arms. They've just added Will Vest and Tyler Rogers,
And Tim
and
Hill.
again, these aren't, the cream of the crop on the bullpen front either. So there will be opportunities for Canada to scratch and claw, but it is going to be a case where they cannot beat themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that's a great point too, where we saw them beat themselves against Panama, right? A couple of errors cost them that game ultimately in the end. And I kind of want to zone in on the pitching. Obviously, we're recording this before Ernie Witt and Team Canada speak to the media in Houston, so we don't, have it locked in that Soroka's starting. But I think that's fairly safe to say that he will be taking the ball to start that game. So keeping the ball on the ground is going to be really important, especially, you think of the Crawford boxes in Houston and some of the righties in this US lineup, namely Aaron Judge, that, the defense is going to be really important. I mean, what do you think about that?
That's the thing, right? Like you act first and solve later because against this US team, I mean, I don't think it's outlandish to say that this will be the toughest opponent that Canada will have faced to this point, and it's not impossible they don't end up being the toughest opponent that they face if they win. So to, try to protect arms for a semifinal you may not even see the light of,
Yeah.
it would make very little sense in that respect.
What do you make of the bullpen? We were talking before we hit record, that you kind of look at that 2023 game against the US, right? Where Mitch Bratt starts, he gives up 6 runs, and only gets 1 out, 3 walks, no Ks. Obviously, kind of you're running. I think he was 19 at the time out there, and then you go to RJ Furr after that, and he gives up 6 runs himself. So you give up 12 runs in the first 2 innings of that game. Do you think that there's a lesson to be learned in there that you want to lean on your veteran arms in this game? Like obviously they enter that one trying to take a bet on talent, right? By saying Mitch Brad is young, but he has the talent to, take down a US lineup. Obviously, you have the veterans to start this game, so you're going that way. But when you think about Canada's bullpen, like they kind of have the same dilemma, right? Like, are you going with a guy like Eric Sarantola, who they've kind of leaned on as their closer so far, or are you leaning on, the Philippe Amonts, the James Paxton, like guys who have pitched on big league mounts against lineups, maybe not lineups like this one, but lineups with major league talent for sure.
I mean, that's a big question because, the process I think would be correct in that you just want your best guys out there and you don't care about how old they are. But I mean, I can understand reservations about whether or not, you know, you do want to turn to a young guy like a Sarantola. I'm not out there, so I can't tell you what the pressure will be like, but the sense you get is that the atmosphere that these are, functionally like playoff games.
Yeah.
And there certainly is something to be said about the added pressure, the added stakes that come despite even if the game leverage isn't high, where the broader leverage of the entire, tournament itself just adds pressure where you feel that you have to be crisp and on point and perfect, right? So I can understand both arguments, right? To me, I am always going to bet on the talent, and we've seen, to a certain extent, it's been on both fronts, right? I mean, you look at James Paxton, as we outlined, this guy looks like he could pitch on a big league mound tomorrow. It doesn't sound like he has any plans to, but I mean, certainly could. They'll almost certainly will be going to the guys that they trust the most, but it is going to be a case where, you have to really kind of figure out what pockets you want to use guys in and whether you feel comfortable turning to a younger guy over a more veteran talent like a Philippe Beaumont because you just like the raw stuff a little bit more from dude number A instead of dude, number B.
It's funny because, I think of, you look at sometimes when young pitchers, face tough lineups, right? And there's kind of a reluctance to maybe be in the zone because you don't want to give up the big home run. But for this team USA, for, a group that isn't going to swing at balls, they're not going to chase out of the zone all that frequently. And so let's say, you walk Aaron Judge, and then it's Kyle Schwarber's coming up to the plate. And then you look on deck and it's like Gunnar Henderson and Cal Raleigh and Roman Anthony and, Bobby Witt Jr. and Bryce Harper and like all these guys are in there. So, I think if you are Canada, like you have to go with your guys that you feel like are going to be in the zone because there is no room to be putting guys on base for free.
Yeah, this is a team that's going to punish for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I guess I would ask then is that to you, are you willing to kind of sacrifice using your stuffiest guys if it means that you're going to kind of be able to work in the zone and be more effective in that capacity?
Can we get a combo of both? Like
They're
honestly,
going to need that. They are. They're going to need that.
I think Paxton was a great example in the round robin. Like he was in the zone and his stuff looked good. So like that's a guy that I would feel pretty confident, putting on the mound in a situation against a Kyle Schwarber or a Gunnar Henderson or Roman Anthony or any of these lefties that Team USA might run out. But I wonder. I think because for us like the entire time we've kind of been like Sarantola is an interesting name to watch. Mako and Wilkinson, but those are like some of the younger guys. But they're also like kind of these higher talent arms coming out of that bullpen. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all lines up. Obviously, the path would be that your starters pitch really well.
I mean, it's that, and then like you mentioned Tugboat Wilkinson, like he's one of the more exciting arms that they've been able to throw out there this tournament. And I'm not sure what pocket he could possibly fit in. I mean, listen, 92 from a lefty to just about any of the right-handed guys is going about 450 feet. So, it's going to be a real test for, I mean, the whole pitching staff, but to a certain extent as well, to going to be a test for Ernie Whitt and Greg Hamilton
Yeah.
and their ability to navigate this lineup and kind of figure out what pockets and what avenues they want to be able to use guys because there's going to be such tight windows to be able to get guys in there and to basically you want to try to get them out as fast as possible because when they've done their job, then you like that's it. You do your job and you get the hell out of there.
Interesting swing point for both these teams entering. Canada was one of two pitching staffs in the pool stage to allow zero home runs. It was Canada and Puerto Rico, and USA was one of I believe it was three or four teams to allow nine home runs in the pool stage, which was the most of any teams to start this tournament. And obviously the atmosphere or the environment in Puerto Rico was maybe a little bit more pitcher friendly as we've talked about. So going to be really interesting to see. I think if you're Canada, like again, this falls into the no duh, but like keeping the ball in the yard and throwing strikes. Like I think that's going to be the two priorities. And if you are Canada's hitters, like we only saw two home runs from them in their four games. But if they're able to, get a couple big swings, like I think that's kind of where Italy got the US, right? Like it was kind of a barrage of homers early. So if Canada can, do kind of those quick strikes, that would be kind of obviously very nice for their offense.
Yeah, I mean the guy that we're both kind of looking at, and we said it yesterday, is Tyler O'Neill. He's going to have to be critical if they have any shot, I think, of beating the States. Him and then obviously Josh Naylor to maybe a slightly lesser extent, but still really, you're going to need your big boys to play. This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
We can kind of shift more to the offense talk. I think you look at it, and in in their 4 games, Abraham Toro and Owen Casey were incredible. They both had OPSs north of 1400, but after them, the third highest OPS on Team Canada in pool play was Bo Naylor at .693. So you're going to need more kind of from the entire lineup and especially from the top, right? I think that was kind of a nice boost for them in that final game against Cuba where Otto Lopez was at the top of the lineup picking up a couple of hits. Josh Naylor comes through with a big RBI single. But it's going to kind of have to be like this 1 through 9 attack if you are going to put up enough runs to beat this team.
Yeah, that's it's gonna be a case where they can't be leaning on the top of their lineup in that way. It's gonna have to be a barrage of production, really, I think is the best way you can put it, right? There's a lot of guys that are on this team that certainly have it in them to be contributors. You mentioned Bo Naylor, you mentioned Otto Lopez, Denzel Clark. I mean, he's shown off the wheels at times, but the bat has been a little bit here and there. Like, there's enough talent on this team to be able to muster up some runs and to be able to do some damage here. It is just gonna be a question of whether or not they can get to Logan Webb fast enough,
Yeah.
basically.
So Logan Webb on the mound. We saw them make the shift for game 4 where they make the lineup changes. Abraham Toro moves up to the cleanup spot. Owen Casey moves up to 5. Otto Lopez into the leadoff spot. Matt Davidson started as a right-hander against Cuba's lefty. Are you running out the same lineup, or what's kind of any lineup changes that you would be looking to make against Logan Webb here?
I mean, I said it. I don't know if I said it, I think it was before we hit the record button, but like, I don't know what changes you could possibly want to make just because, you're cruising right now. And, Davidson looks a little overmatched. He's a guy that I think we've both kind of circled as, maybe not a guy you want necessarily in a huge game like
I
this.
I don't mind him as like a guy to bring off the bench against a lefty, right? Just I kind of wonder what obviously they've leaned on Tyler Black a little bit more than Jared Young so far in the tournament. So it wouldn't shock me if kind of they ran out like almost the exact same lineup, except for Tyler Black at first instead of Matt Davidson.
And also, I mean, Tyler Black brings a different element with his speed as well. And you got to figure that that's going to be something that Canada's going to want to go after, right? I mean, listen, Canada's going to have to manufacture runs as much as they're going to have to try to, win
Yeah.
with the long ball. And if they're gonna do that, it's gonna be the likes of the Tyler Blacks and the Denzel Clarks and the Abraham Toros and the Otto Lopez's that are gonna be, running wild and hopefully making life difficult for Cal Raleigh or Will Smith or whoever ends up being the back catcher for this one, right? Like it's gonna be a case where they have to kind of be athletic out there because the States is going to just mash no matter what. And they do have athleticism to spare. I mean, again, Gunner's likely to be in the lineup. Bobby Witt Jr. is likely to be in the lineup. But, you know, to that end, Kyle Schwarber isn't going to be swiping bags. He's going to be hitting dingers. Aaron Judge is not going to be swiping bags. He's going to be hitting dingers. So, how is Canada going to match that kind of ferocity? You would think that it would be by, turning singles into doubles, turning doubles
Yeah.
into triples, turning errors into runs, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What do you think of Otto back in the leadoff spot? I know, they kind of needed to make a switch with the way that Julian had struggled early on in the tournament, and obviously with the lefty Moinelo pitching for Cuba, you go with the right-handed Lopez. It's kind of funny, like he has a very extreme reverse splits. I just pulled it up here, but it's a 107 WRC plus against righties and a 42 against lefties. So the numbers were maybe screaming, maybe not Otto Lopez against a lefty, but of course he goes 2 for 4, 2 RBIs and a walk. You leave him in there against Webb
I think that's fair. I think that you could do that. I really, I know you want guys on base, but I wouldn't hate to see Owen Casey
in
in
the
the
leadoff
leadoff
spot.
spot. I think that if you want to really, fight fire with fire, I'd like to get Owen Casey up as much as humanly possible.
I wouldn't hate Toro lead off, Naylor 2, O'Neal 3, Casey 4.
I think that to me, you're 4 games in, you know who's going right now.
Yeah.
You've got to let those guys ride.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in the top five for sure, Naylor, O'Neal, Toro, and Casey. Like no
Have to
debate
be.
about that.
Have to be.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously lineup construction it is what it is what it is. It's not the end all be all of winning baseball games, but will be interesting to kind of see what they do. I kind of wonder. I mean, we haven't seen Jacob Robson, we haven't seen Adam Hall, so I don't think that you're gonna kind of see them sneak into this game unless it is a blowout one way or the other. Is there kind of Jared Young like you don't you're probably not him in this game at first base even if you are going with the left-handed first baseman.
Yeah, I think, to me, I get it. The power obviously for Young, like you like that, but I mean, it's just a case of, you got to decide how you want to go out and attack this U.S. kind of
Yeah.
pitching staff. And I think that, the margin of error in a Jared Young versus a Tyler Black, it's so minimal that I think that the extra speed tool at least
Yeah.
could feasibly be a difference maker for sure. And it's the opposite in a postseason game where you're always scratching and clawing for every extra ounce of power. But I think in this situation, as the enormous underdogs, you have to introduce chaos. That's the best way that the
Yeah.
best shot you're gonna have is by introducing as much chaos as humanly possible. And, the best way to do so is to cause chaos on the bases.
Yeah, Jared Young did homer against the U.S. in the 2023 World Baseball Classic, but that was off Lance Lynn and not not Logan Webb, so a little bit of a difference there. And I mean, as much as I said earlier that they are going to need like the big swings, you probably don't want to try and beat the U.S. at their own game,
Yeah.
right? Like you like you said, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where it is you got to keep playing your game that you played in San Juan, and if you can get those big swings, then great. That probably helps you secure an upset, but you can't try to go swing for swing with Aaron Judge and Kyle Schwarber and Cal Raleigh.
Yeah, you're gonna get beat every time.
All right. I mean, one other thing that'll be interesting is the pitch count increase now, where the guys will be able to go up to 80 pitches. It is, I believe, rather than the 65. As for the U.S., they're coming in with a couple switches as well. As you mentioned, it's Will Vest, Tyler Rogers, and Tim Hill coming in for Skubal, Waka, and Yarbrough. I wonder if you're looking at this U.S. bullpen, like to me, the U.S. bullpen is maybe like a spot where they are certainly gettable. Obviously, Logan Webb, incredibly good pitcher, like all-star level Cy Young candidate type, but he's also a guy that you can probably survive against and not punch out 20 10 15 times against. But kind of when you look beyond that, I think that's a spot where Canada will have a chance to make put some runs up on the board, and whether it is kind of those three guys that I just mentioned, whether it's looking past that, Bednar, Jax, Garrett Whitlock, Garrett Clevenger, Mason Miller is obviously really tough, but even you look at like the lefty like Gabe Spire, I think that there's room for them to do damage late in this game.
I mean, if you're looking for a soft underbelly on an otherwise, pretty hard shell, it's the bullpen for the U.S. for sure. I mean, you have to get to them. You have to get to the point where you're able to chase a Logan Webb, and that's no easy task.
Yeah,
But I think you've kind of identified it pretty clearly there that it's not the same quality of talent as much of the rest of the roster.
yeah. It's going to be interesting. I mean, do you kind of anybody plant your flag? Any Canadian hitters, any Canadian pitchers that you feel particularly good about going into this one?
I don't know if there's anyone specifically that I'm really eyeing up. Uh, I really do like the idea of making sure that you've got your best hitters, at the very top. And if that isn't Owen Casey leading off, they probably wouldn't do it. I think Ernie Whitt's a little bit too traditional on that. But I'm really looking at that kind of top of the lineup group. Someone to really break out. Tyler O'Neill is a guy that we've said a couple times already. Josh Naylor is a guy you'd really like to break out. Bo Naylor, even to a certain extent.
Yeah,
He's not necessarily at the very top of the lineup, but another guy that you would certainly like to see a little bit of production out of. Someone's going to have to do something here that they haven't done through the pool stage if Canada has any aspirations of beating a gargantuan United States team.
Yeah, give me Tyler Black as my pick for this one. Good feeling that he's got something coming. So, all right. You ready? You ready for the last part of this that I have
Well,
on the rundown
let
here?
me just say this because the last thing on our lineup is predictions. And, anyone in their right mind would predict a US victory, I think. But here's what we'll here let me maybe hijack it a
All
little
right,
bit.
all right.
What is the path to victory for Canada if
Yeah.
they're going to win this game?
Yeah, I think you get to Webb early. You get him out, right? Like you get to the bullpen kind of in the game, kind of within striking range or with a lead. And then, you kind of slam it down at the end. I think, the late game stuff against the US bullpen will be key. And especially if you're able to put a little bit of pressure on this US team, right? Like they're coming off the Italy loss. They're coming off this scenario where they were nearly eliminated, where they've been talking themselves up as the best team ever assembled. If you make them sweat a little bit, I would be interesting to see, what their bullpen does late in the game. Does Mark DeRosa, you know, make a bold move to go to, somebody out of the pen that doesn't work out or something like that. Just put the pressure on and put the thought in the back of their minds that they might be headed home, and that the Italy loss wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, and I think to a certain degree, all of that. But if you want to say my vision for this one, if Canada
Yeah.
is going to win, it's going to be limiting the damage early for sure.
Yeah.
I think without a doubt, you're going to have to get through those first two, three, even four innings, keeping this one close. And if you can shorten the game a little bit here, anything can happen.
All right. Give me one prediction for the game. One real prediction for the game. It doesn't have to be who wins, who loses, but one thing that you believe will happen.
Canada out homers the United
Oh,
States.
wow. I like it. I like it. They get there and they're kind of like, wow, the ball's kind of flying today, and they kind of take advantage of that. I'll go prediction wise. Owen Casey home run in the game. The guy's on fire and just got all the momentum in the world. So, anything else from you on this one before we call it for the day?
I think that's about it. I think I'm just about ready to, you know, for country, for glory.
Yes, it is going to be exciting. Obviously, such a highly anticipated game, and I think we kind of felt it coming like throughout the round robin, as it seemed like things were lining up that way. So it's going to be fun, and hopefully they're able to run out a strong performance the way that they have the last couple games. It's going to be interesting, and fingers crossed that we'll be talking after that one after a win. All right, that is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEB_pod. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the game.